Radio.
So the theme tonight has been a little bit of the system punching down at the little guy. And I'm going to just say it. You should arm yourself. If you're an American, you should be armed, legally armed, and well-trained. We're at a point in this country now, we talked about home invasions earlier. We talk about crime going rampant. There are people being abducted all over this country and put into sex trafficking, home invasions on the rise. All kind of crazy stuff going on. So you got to pick your place. Like Ed said earlier in the show, you got to be in the right place. Know you live in a place that supports freedom, or at least as close as you can find to it, and arm yourself and train yourself. We're joined now by the executive director for the San Diego Gun Owners PAC. SDCGO for short is a political organization that focuses on Second Amendment issues at the local level there in San Diego. It's wonderful to have Michael Schwartz back with us. Michael, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
We're very pleased that you're here. A lot of things going on in the 2A realms right now. We just had this decision by SCOTUS come out to do with the restraining orders and all that. What's your take on some of the newest legal actions you've seen?
Yeah, there was a lot of action in the courts, including two decisions from the Supreme Court, one last week and one just today, just a few hours ago. And we're all still going through it. But it's I don't know if at first I was thinking of it as a mixed bag, because there's a little bit that's good, there's a little bit that's bad. But after reviewing it, and I'm not totally done yet, I would say that really it's unusual, first off, because the decision has individually written decisions by almost all the Supreme Court justices, where usually you have a majority and then you have a dissent. So you have two decisions. This has multiple decisions. And I think it really hasn't changed anything. What it's done is it's given us a peek into how each justice would interpret the Second Amendment and how they would apply the Bruin decision from a couple of years ago that was Second Amendment related to that Second Amendment. So I don't think it's a lot of people are looking at it and going, "Oh my gosh, this has changed or that's changed." I don't think anything's changed. What we really have is now a guidebook on exactly how each of those Supreme Court justices would vote in a Second Amendment case. And that's really interesting. It's very unique. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, there have been a few cases, but you're right. They are incredibly rare, and it is a wonderful window into the jurisprudence of each of the justices. It was an 8-1 decision, but as you said, there was the majority opinion, but then there were three different concurrences, and then, of course, there was Clarence Thomas's dissent, and he simply dissented, saying, based on Bruin, that these laws were not contemplated by the founders, so they shouldn't be contemplated here. Brian and I were talking about this earlier in the week, Michael, and you don't want somebody who is a violent abuser of his wife and children, a domestic abuser, to be able to have a firearm. But that doesn't stop someone who's a violent abuser from having a firearm, right? We all know that criminals are going to get guns regardless. What concerns me the most here is the very thin, if any, procedural protections that someone has against a domestic violence restraining order. Typically, in many jurisdictions, I know this is the case here in New York, all a woman has to do is go into court and ask for one, and she gets it. There's no hearing. There's no opportunity to present a defense. So I wouldn't be opposed to having a higher standard of proof at a hearing before denying someone their Second Amendment rights if they've got a domestic violence restraining order against them. But to just out of hand say, okay, here's the domestic violence restraining order, and also we're going to take away the guy's gun rights, that to me is setting the stage for abuse.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I have no interest in standing up for the rights or defending someone who's violent or an abuser, anything like that. In fact, we say that we stand up for the rights of the sane, trained, law-abiding gun owner. Full stop. And we actually have a very successful women's program that helps stop domestic violence and sexual assault by arming women. So we don't mess around with that at all. We take it very seriously. But that being said, what you're describing is absolutely true. People are using these gun violence restraining orders vindictively. And really what it boils down to is this phrase due process. And people kind of throw it around almost like it's one word and don't really maybe stop to think of what exactly is meant by due process. Well, process is easy. It's filling out an application or, a request or something like that. But the due part is what's really important here. When something isn't a big deal, then the due process is much lower. It doesn't take as much process in order to accomplish it. But when you're taking away someone's natural right, when you're infringing on somebody's right to self-defense or taking away their right to keep and bear arms, the due process, that bar is much higher. And a lot of these gun violence restraining orders, it's little more than an accusation. And I have personally helped people find attorneys and fight it out in court. When somebody they get mad, they get emotional. Maybe it's a spouse that caught someone else cheating, or maybe it's a roommate that owes the other one money, or maybe it's just the weird employee that nobody really likes, and they make an accusation, little more than an accusation, with no proof, and boom, a gun violence restraining order ruins this person's life. Tens of thousands in legal fees. Maybe they lose their job. Maybe they never get their guns back. So it's a very important distinction. We certainly are not defending the right for abusers to have weapons or to be abusers. What we are doing is making sure that sane, trained, law-abiding citizens are protected, that due process is in place so that we don't get hurt.
Yeah. And that's the kind of nuance that the left and the mass media cartel just do not want in the public lexicon. They do not want us understanding what due process means. They do not want to highlight cases of temporary ROs being used vindictively. I've never seen a stat on how often that happens in the mass media, not once. And I know those stats are out there, or at least a guess at them is out there. Michael, please hold the line. We have a headline coming in. We'll pick up right here after this headline with today's News Talk, TNT.
Eggs. You can fry them, scramble them, poach them, boil them, or race them on a spoon. But uncooked eggs can be a risk for food poisoning. To be safe, avoid buying dirty or cracked eggs. Always wash your hands after handling eggs. And if you're concerned, pregnant, elderly, or have a poor immune system, make sure you cook eggs until the yolk starts to firm. Or look for new pasteurized eggs. For excellent eggs, handle them safely.
We're the pinup boys and poster girls for free speech. We just don't look as impressive as Vladimir Putin shirtless on a horse. Yeah. 24/7, 365. We never stop sifting fact from fiction, misinformation from the truth, from government overreach to the latest on mandates, big tech censorship to propaganda gone mad. Listen to TNT Radio and get the news and views direct from our expert presenters and commentators anywhere you go. Ask Alexa or Google to play TNT Radio or download the TNT Radio app for free from the App Store or Google Play. Today's News Talk. This is TNT Radio.
Michael, I heard Gavin Newsom recently made comments about wanting to change the Constitution so that he could find ways to make certain guns illegal. Did you hear this? I mean, is this one of the stupidest things ever? I mean, my hackles go up when I hear anyone talk about changing the Constitution. Even if it's for the better, because someone else is going to get in the room and try to chip away at it. But how's it going in California with you guys and Gavin?
Gavin Newsom he'd make me laugh harder if he didn't make me cry so often. I mean, it's amazingly frustrating. And he comes up with a lot of harebrained schemes. But yeah, the latest is he wanted to have a constitutional convention and try to add an amendment to the Constitution that would basically completely and totally gut the meaning of the Second Amendment. Now, the funniest part was he'd say, "Oh, no, we're going to leave the Second Amendment intact," but then the amendment he was proposing would basically allow quite literally any kind of gun control that any municipality decided that they wanted, including gun bans. And I had to really listen hard. Well, what does he mean by this? How can he say that he's leaving the Second Amendment intact, but he wants this amendment that's going to basically gut the meaning? And really all he meant was the 27 words were going to remain on the paper in the Constitution, but that all the protection that those words give were going to be completely gone. So that's what he was out telling people in the news. Oh, don't worry, we're going to leave the Second Amendment intact. We just want to amend the Constitution. And that's all he meant, was that we're going to leave the 27 words in place, but all the meaning and all the protection is going to be completely gone. And it's just baffling. I really, it's unbelievable when you listen to elected officials, and they talk out of both sides of their mouth, and they say one thing and mean another, or they say one thing and do another. But I've never seen something so horrendously, just a complete and total lie as to, what Gavin Newsom was saying about his new amendment and how it's going to not affect the Second Amendment. But I got to tell you, it's failing miserably. This has been going on for over a year, and not a single state has said that they support what he's trying to do. It's really kind of turned into a big joke.
Not even New York State, which is the birthplace of Operation Choke Point, where they tried to get firing ranges, gun shops, sporting goods stores that sold firearms debanked and lose their insurance coverage. So yeah, you can have a gun store, but we're not going to allow you to have access to banking products or insurance products. It's backdoor gun control. And this is exactly why George Washington included sufficient shot and powder when they were discussing the Second Amendment. It's not just the right to have a musket. It's to have a musket with sufficient shot and powder, or in our parlance, sufficient 45 ACP and full metal jacket rounds.
Yeah, Operation Choke Point was a real thing. That happened under the Obama administration, and then a number of states kind of adopted it as well. And I definitely had gun shops that would call me and say, "Hey, we came in this morning and, our credit card service is completely shut off, and I don't know what to do. I can't conduct any business." Banks would close their account, tell them they'd have to go bank somewhere else. That was a very real thing. And the Trump administration put an end to that, but it doesn't mean that some of the states have tried to do it on the state level. But that's a very real thing. It's not, people think that gun control, or what we're fighting against, is like a complete and total gun ban. Well, certainly we fight against that as well, but it's all these little mini battles where they chip away at people's ability to open up a gun shop, to run a gun shop, to visit a gun shop. And then, for people to buy a gun at a gun shop. And so they've gotten very, very creative. And partially, I think it's because they're seeing the writing on the wall. They're smart, and they see that they're losing in court, and they're losing at the polls, and they're losing in culture. There are more people that have a concealed weapon permit in the United States than ever before. There's more women, more minorities, more LGBT are carrying and owning firearms than ever before. So they're desperately trying to chip away at the edges to stop what really is, common sense. You got to be able to defend yourself to have any other rights. So the Second Amendment is thriving. I'm seeing a bright light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming this way. It's good news.
Yeah. And that Second Amendment, I'm sorry, but if you're in any of those classifications you just mentioned, or another one, and you gravitate towards, gun ownership, training, and the proper mindset to be a gun owner in this country, you're not going to be someone that falls into that victimhood mindset. Your operating system, even if you had that going into that purchase and you're serious about it, that operating system is going to get replaced. So it like this, the Second Amendment itself is actually a huge threat to the victim mindset, which I think is the most popular install they want on the plebs here.
It's very true, and like I said, although maybe it seems like that there's a lot of things that are happening that are bad for gun owners. There's a lot of really good things. We talked about today's Supreme Court case, but last week there was a huge case that it was involving bump stocks. And a lot of people don't know what a bump stock is. And to be honest with you, it's not a very popular product. But the case wasn't really about bump stocks. It was about the ATF creating law out of thin air. They're not the legislative branch, but they decided one day that a bump stock was totally legal and fine. And then they decided the next day that a bump stock made your firearm into a machine gun, and made a legal change. They made a change in the law. And so it was taken to court, and the Supreme Court said, nope, ATF, you cannot do that. You cannot just decide what the law is. That has to go through the legislature. And that was a very important case. The ATF, I got to tell you, living in California, working with the different gun shops, seeing things firsthand, the ATF is not in check. They are a predatory agency. You do not become an ATF agent because you want to support the Second Amendment, and I've seen them really truly go after gun owners and gun shops. And so for such an important case to come out of the Supreme Court and say, hey, ATF, you guys are a part of the executive branch. You do as you're told, and you have to follow the law too. It was an extremely important case, and it was a very important protection for gun owners across the nation.
Yes, absolutely.
I think ATF is completely out of control, but I think every single federal agency is completely out of control. I mean, EPA has over 1 million rounds of ammunition. Why does EPA? NOAA has rounds. Obama armed NOAA to the teeth. National Oceanographic and Air Atmospheric Administration. So our entire executive branch is out of control. And I think what the court was doing in the bump stock case was, again, laying the groundwork, providing the rationale for the Loomer Bright case, which I think is going to overturn Chevron deference, in which the executive branch gets to basically make up its own rules. I think the Supreme Court is about to give Congress back its power.
Which is important. I think it's extremely important, but it also, that's not just giving Congress back its power, it's giving the people back their power.
Back our power. Yeah.
So we live in the country of the self-governed, and it's not a spectator sport. So you have to know who your representative is. You have to be involved in the process. Help them get elected. Make sure that your representative knows how you want to be represented, because it's important. We can't just rely on the Supreme Court to come and save us. We certainly can't rely on the executive branch to save us. Get involved and make sure that your voice is heard.
Absolutely. Well said, Michael. I want to thank you so much for your time and everything you do. We always appreciate your expertise. We could talk to you for hours. So many things going on. So follow the San Diego County Gun Owners Pack at SanDiegoCountyGunOwners.com, on X at SDCGO2A, and on Facebook, SDCGO. Michael Schwartz, thank you so much for joining us. We'll look forward to your next appearance.
Thank you, gentlemen.